So I have to admit, I have less of a devotional and more of a story that I would like to share. So Tim, who wanted to hear my devotional and will be doing so tomorrow, I am sorry. Anyway, so many of you know, me and Jamie had went to Japan about 2 weeks ago, and it's something we had planned for about a year at that point. We were very excited to get to go and see a part of the world that's very different than what we know here. And once we were there, we traveled all across Japan. We got to see Tokyo Tower. We got to go to the atomic bomb dome in Hiroshima and got to stand in the hypocenter of where the bomb exploded. We also got to see several samurai castles, and we got to see Mount Fuji. But one thing that we saw absolutely everywhere, and I mean they were all over the place, was Shinto shrines and Buddhist temples. And it wasn't uncommon you'd just be walking down a random street and run into one just out of nowhere. And they ranged in all sorts of sizes. You had some that were these big cultural centers, and then some that was probably about the size of this podium. And religiously, that part of the world is very different than what we know here. Now, I've said this about the Japan part of the trip, and many of you know that that was primarily where we're at. What you may not know is we also visited South Korea. We were there for an entire day, and they're very similar, except they had more Buddhist leanings than they did Shinto. But the people of South Korea were greatly different than the people of Japan. You see, in Japan, they're very quiet and very reserved, and they would only talk to you if provoked, and even then, they were very shy about it. But they would still help you with whatever you had questions about. In South Korea, they didn't care. They would just walk up to you, strike up conversation, talk about just about anything and everything, and there was absolutely no shyness whatsoever. So, one day we arrived in Busan, South Korea, and we had no plans for that day. We didn't have anything specific that we were going to see there in the city. So we just intended to walk around and, see what happens. So while we were walking through the city, we came across a place called Yeongduson Park. Within the park, it had a bunch of cultural statues, fountains, traditional structures, and it had a Buddhist temple there as well. And as we were making our way up to the map, there was a man who was jogging by, and he stopped and saw us, and he decided he was going to strike up some conversations with us. And he spoke actually pretty good English for the most part, though he did, kind of awkwardly word a couple of things. He wanted to know where we were from. We told him we were from the United States. He was very excited about this. I'd mentioned that both my grandfathers served in Korea. He was very, very excited about that. He wanted to know what star we were from. And when I say star, I mean that is exactly how he worded it. Took us a second to figure out what he was talking about, and we're like, oh, he's meaning states. You see, he knew that the U.S. flag had a star for every state and wanted to know what star we were from. So we told him Tennessee. He's like, oh, he had never heard of Tennessee, by the way. He said, he informed us that South Korea was roughly the same size as Mississippi. And for those who are curious, South Korea is actually a little bit smaller than the state of Tennessee. That being said, he wanted to know how we found that park. He had never seen tourists make it that far back into the city. And said, we saw it online and on YouTube and whatnot. We figured we'd just walk over here and check it out. Now, he asked us several other questions like, what do we do for work? What dock our boat was at? Or how long we would be in South Korea? And he also found my beard very, very interesting. He said it reminded him of Russians. And I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing, but I took it as a compliment nonetheless. So after about 20 minutes or so of talking, the conversation started to wind down. We started to say our goodbyes. And as we started to part our way, he asked one last question. He asked, are you all Christian? Now, this one was the most jarring of the questions I had. Like, it really caught me off guard. And it wasn't because I was afraid to answer the question. It's more the fact that I had spent an entire week in Asia at this point. I had seen all these shrines. I'd seen all these temples. I didn't see many churches at all. So we answered, yes, we are Christian. And he goes, good. Me too. I was just caught off guard. You see, before we left that conversation, He wanted to let us know that he was a Christian and wanted to know if we were Christian. This has stood out as a highlight of our trip because we're on the other side of the world, literally the other side of the world. I don't look nothing like this man. We grew up in vastly different places, yet he wanted to share the fact that he was a Christian and wanted to know if we were Christians. How often do we do this? How often do we show our Christian faith? They say the average person meets roughly 3 new people every single day. That equates to about 1,095 new people every year, which is roughly 83,000 people in a lifetime. Could you imagine the impact we would have if we could even capture a small amount of that? Now, I'm not saying that we don't do this. As a matter of fact, I think this congregation does it more than most. I mean, you could tell that by the attendance here alone. The past couple Sundays, we've broke over 100, and that's starting to become more and more a common thing. We're running out of space. So let's keep that up. Let's keep spreading the word. Well, like I said, this isn't a normal devotional. It's more of a story that I wanted to share, and it's something that has just stuck in my mind ever since we've been back. But at this point, we offer the invitation for those. If you're lost or just need help, come forward, lay it on us. Let us help you bear that weight. If you'd like to become a new Christian, put on Christ in baptism, please do so as we stand and sing.